Hello again and welcome back after this short coffee break. We will proceed now with the second block of presentation. We will get a little bit more down into the scientific and technical details of our upcoming calls or already launched calls. And I would like to invite, as a first presentation, Giuseppe Stancanelli from the Plant Health and Pesticide Unit to give us a little bit of an overview for the plan for 2023 calls for grants in plant health. Thanks, Giuseppe. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Giselle, for giving the floor, and thank you for everybody for coming to this event. Can you see my presentation on the screen? So I would like to briefly present the 2023 plan for grants in the area of plant health in EFSA. And I will do this for the two main areas of EFSA work, which is the plant health monitoring area and the plant health risk assessment. In particular, I will show you what grants are open on the area of plant health monitoring currently on EFSA website, which grants are planned on plant health monitoring for 2023, and which grants are planned on plant health risk assessment. So the grants which are currently open on EFSA website are two, with several lots, and these are related to the area of plant health surveillance, plant health monitoring. In particular, we have a call with 4 different lots on developing of crop-based survey tools for plant pests of vegetables, cereals, grape and fruits, palm and ornamentals, 4 different lots, with deadline 2023. These are examples of the grants which were explained before by Donna, which are grants where the EFSA grant is not linked to the cost, but is already calculated based on the amount of work which is required. And each of these lots require the production of a certain number of specific pest survey cards, data sheets, and also activity on database for the different crops. The requirements are specific for the area of the lots, so you need to open the call and see which are the requirements, for example, for the fruit-bearing vegetables, for the cereals and so on, and normally are expertise. The requirement involve expertise in the area of the lot, so not only plant health, but also specific expertise for each lot. Then there is another call, which is also ongoing until end of January 2023, which is about estimating the pest survey parameter for the new EFSA mandate on priority pest. Also here we have 2 lots with different specialization, and the line is a bit more near. So it's end of January. This was launched early in autumn. Normally after the line expires in the period of maximum 2 months, the award is done by EFSA. So in the same area of plant health monitoring, we have then the plan for 2 different types of grants. Also, these are grants which are not linked to cost, so with a fixed amount for different type of activity. So it's very simple for budgeting and also for the final closing of the grant. And these grants serve, like the previous one, to support the EFSA activity in plant health. So to work together with EFSA in delivering the support to the European and member state plant health surveillance. So the first one, which we plan to launch in January, with final deadline in March, is about a procurement for preparing training material for pest surveillance. We had the task from the European Commission to provide training material to the member state, but also to the third countries on risk-based and statistic-based surveillance. And for this, we launch a procurement for e-learning and webinars on pest surveillance. Another grant, which is similar to the one already ongoing, is on pest survey card preparation. So Article 36 grant will be launched end of this in the quarter 4, 2023, approximately September 2023, with a line November 2023, and with different lots again. So this is a grant to support EFSA activity on preparation of pest survey card, which is a task very broad way to do for all the hundreds of different quarantine pests of the EU legislation. It's about non-EU bark beetles, Aclery species, still insect of forest and wood, begomoviruses, non-EU vectors of Xylella, non-EU Cicadomorpha, and other various pests. Also, this grant is not with the calculation of cost, calculation not linked to cost, but based on fixed amount. In the area of plant health risk assessment in 2023, we instead plan to launch grants on research to reduce risk assessment uncertainties or knowledge gaps on new and emerging plant pests. In particular, this call will be launched with several lots in January 2023, and with a planned application deadline by April 2023. And the focus will be on two different topics. One is about the collection of experimental and observational evidence to reduce the knowledge gaps on the emerging pest Xylella fastidiosa and its vectors. And the second group of activity is about collection of experimental and observational evidence to reduce mycological knowledge gaps for risk assessment of fungal plant pathogen. And the call on Xylella is focusing on a new insect, invasive species, was found recently in spring 2022 at the border between Spain and France, the sharpshooter Draculacephala robinsoni, which is a vector of Xylella fastidiosa in America. It's an American insect, so we would like to have the applicant to, the successful applicant to study the biology and the capacity to transmit Xylella fastidiosa or other viruses of this sharpshooter. So we know more and we can prepare and support the plant health activity to control this new invasive insect. The other two grants about mycological knowledge gaps. One is regarding the distribution, particularly in Europe, of plant pathogenic fungal species, particularly genus Coleotricum, which were recently subject to taxonomical changes. So fundamentally, all the information is now need to be updated because due to taxonomical changes is not it's very uncertain which is the distribution of these species in Europe. And the other grant will be to do further work on the epidemiology and the control of the plant pathogenic fungus Phyllocythus hydrocarpa, the agent of Citrus spot, which is already present in Mediterranean in one outbreak area in Tunisia, in which we already have one grant ongoing in cooperation with a Tunisian subcontractor. So that's all the activity planned for 2022. So now I am available for question or clarification.
Thank you, Giuseppe. I suggest that we collate all the questions through the question and answer chat, and we'll dedicate answers during the Q&A session that is envisaged at the end of the rest of the presentation. I would then move to the next presentation in agenda. It's about environmental risk assessment for plant protection product, and we have Domenica Autieri from the pesticide units to present the topic. Thank you, Domenica. The floor is yours.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you. I'm trying to share the right screen right now. Just give me a minute. Okay. I hope that now you see correctly the presentation. Okay, so good morning. Thank you, Giselle. Good morning, everybody. I'm Domenica Uteri. I work in the pesticide peer review unit in EFSA, and I'm the team leader of the ecotoxicology team. Today, I would like to introduce you some of the projects that we at the moment are still envisioning in the area of environmental risk assessment of plant protection products. I would like to mention that these projects are will be developed under the PERA roadmap. So PERA is an acronym from a EU partnership for system-based approach in the environmental risk assessment. And we start implementing this roadmap in the area of plant protection products. So the next one. Okay. So just a few words on the PERA roadmap. And so in recent years, EFSA has adopted a thematic paper, as I said, for building a European partnership for next generation system-based environmental risk assessment. The thematic paper has been let's say, published on the EFSA website after consultation with some of relevant stakeholders. And EFSA has also outsourced development of the roadmap, which has been finalized. The roadmap was developed by a consortium of academia led by Professor Paolo Sousa. And the roadmap is also public available on the EFSA website. Under this framework and adopting the vision that has been and the recommendation given in the roadmap, EFSA is now developing a multi-annual plan for implementing the vision and the recommendation for pesticide for plant protection product. We had identified a number of projects which will be launched in the next years. At the moment, these are project ideas, and we are going to in this box there are from work package 1 to 8 are projects already in a way identified, while there might be in the future other projects that can be identified following the outcome of the first batch, the first phase. Particularly, I would like to mention those that will be likely launched for which we had envisioning to launch in 2023. So the first one is the development of European environmental scenarios for the risk assessment of no-target organism, particularly in the area of terrestrial organism. So we start from the issue that currently there is a lack of understanding of the reality, and we want to introduce the geographic approach as a possible solution. So meaning that we want to introduce a landscape-based risk assessment. So the scope of this project will be to gain knowledge in the agroecosystems on both on the landscape structure and on the ecology of the areas that are surrounding the treated areas, and also in the treated areas themselves. And we had this project will be developed through the 3 main objectives. The first one is to collect data, georeferences data, and I'm meaning the existing data, analyzing those data, and consider data generation, so considering field work to address the gaps which will be identified from this analysis. The second main objective is to characterize the agroecosystems in terms of habitat and species composition. So also here we had foreseen field trials, and analyze the species sensitivity. So when a species will be identified in the different habitat and according and the different cropping systems, we would like to also undertake experimental work in order to understand the species sensitivity to pesticide. We also would like to start addressing the availability and the state of the art, regarding availability of food web and ecological interaction model. This is quite relevant to understand also the possible indirect effect across the food web and across the various organisms. So, as I said, this call is foreseen for 2023. We had estimated a budget of 6 million euro, and will be a tender. We consider that this could be better addressed via a tender. The second project for 2023 is in relation to identification or development of environmental risk assessment methodology for plant protection products that are considered of low concern. This means, for example, plant protection product with a low toxicological profile, and for those substances, for those products, we consider useful to have a more simplified or lean approach in order to speed up the risk assessment process and to identify only the aspects where potential risk might be present. This was also one of the recommendation of the roadmap in light of the Green Deal to, let's say, facilitate the access of the market of greener products. So the scope is to develop science-based criteria, for example, for data waiver. So for a better characterization of the problem formulation, data waiver, I mean that some of the legal data requirement, which are mandatory for all the chemicals, could be waived, but we need to have to get criteria, science-based criteria for addressing this data waiver. We would like also to develop methods that are more fit for the purpose in relation to both exposure and hazard assessment of this specific category of plant protection products. The call will be launched also in 2023 and is 500,000 euro. And in this case, we consider as a best mechanism a grant, because we would like to have organization of Article 36 organization involved on this project. So, and this was my last slide. So thank you for your attention, and I'm also happy to answer your question during the Q&A session. So I give the floor back to you, Giselle. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Domenica, for this overview I would like to move to the next presentation. Before going there, I would invite you to post all your questions in the Q&A chat, and then at the end of all the presentation, we will address them. Some have been already replied, but if need be, we can also go through them again, of course, if time allows us. Okay, so I would like now to give the floor to Gorgias. Gorgias is going to present us a large number of calls in the pipeline or calls that have been already launched. So please, Gorgias, I give you the floor, and we have you for the next 20 minutes, I guess. Thank you, Gorgias.
Thank you very much, Giselle. Just in confirmation, do you see my presentation is being shared? I believe so, yes. Thank you. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, dear colleagues. My name is Gorgias Garofalakis. I work in the same unit as Giselle in the Knowledge, Innovation and Partnership Management unit of EFSA. And in the next few minutes, give or take 20, I will take you through some calls in addition to the calls that the colleagues Giuseppe and Domenica have presented just beforehand. A disclaimer that applies to all the calls that are envisaged but not yet published, which is written on the slide, is basically that the information that you see here is based on what we are currently planning, and there might be changes up to the time that the call is actually launched. So the important thing is for you to consult the call when this will be published. I will be starting with mentioning two calls that we have already open on our website. You can visit them, you can apply for them as we speak. For convenience, I have included a QR code on the lower right side of this slide, which you can scan and go to the call page immediately if it is of interest to you. So this is a relatively big call that we have currently open. This is a call asking organizations to support EFSA in the risk assessment of food enzymes, food additives, food flavorings, and feed additives. This is a response to the need that we have for support in this area, in the assessment of applications in these specific product domains. And the work there is basically distributed according to the scientific competencies needed to perform such assessment. The call consists of 8 lots. 7 of them focus, as I said, in specific competencies that are needed in order to perform that assessment. So we have lots, for instance, that focus on the characterization of microorganisms that might be used such as additives or as means to produce the additives. We have a lot which is dedicated to the assessment of toxicological safety of the substance in question. We have another lot for dietary exposure and so on. The 8th lot corresponds to the assemblance of the draft opinion. This is, as I said, a call which is rather big. It has an envelope of 3.5 million euros. It is open for participation to Article 36 organizations and will be implemented through a framework partnership agreement. The second call, which is already open, and again, you can see the QR code at the lower right side of the slide, concerns capacity building. This is a call that we have for our EU4 fellowship program. This is a program that enables organizations to send a fellow to a different organization so that they receive hands-on training on risk assessment. The EU4 program establishes a 12-month learning by doing fellowship, and a part of it will be dedicated to work of the fellow in the hosting side. The call needs consortia to be formed, so consortia of hosting sites and fellow sending organizations. It is a call that we launch on an annual basis, and the current call, as I said, is already open. This, as Donna mentioned in her presentation, is going to be a call that will be open to submissions only electronically, so in the e-grant portal of the European Commission. And for that, for this peculiarity of the call, there will be 2 dedicated info sessions to present the call and the modalities. The first one is actually next week, is on the 20th of December, and the one after that will be on the 7th of February. The overall envelope for this call is 825,000 euros, and the calculation is 50,000 euros per grant per fellow. Again, this is a call for grant. That means that it is applicable only to Article 36 organizations. Moving now into a call that it is anticipated in 2023. This has to do with knowledge organization. And the objective of this call is to facilitate EFSA in benefiting from information from knowledge which is devoted to repetitive tasks. The objective for the successful contractor there will be to look into existing publications of EFSA, identify repetitive tasks there. Those could be the tables, paragraphs of text, tables, or graphs, or things like that could constitute knowledge bits. Identify those knowledge bits, tag them with relevant metadata, and make them available in a structured file format, like a JSON file, for instance. Then the contractor should develop an interface that would allow the search throughout those knowledge bits, identify any information that would be useful, provide metadata that would support its reuse, and do that in a format that is suitable for humans to work on, such as an MS Word file. Citation information is one of the data that we would like to be available with the knowledge bit, because it would hugely facilitate the reusability of the knowledge there. An example of such a repetitive task would be the various plant pest cards, pest survey cards, for instance, which are being regularly reviewed. So it would be hugely helpful for EFSA to be able to identify which information has already been entered and which one should be changed for the future update. This will be a call for tender. The financial envelope for this call will be 300,000 euros. Now, entering into the domain of biological hazards, this specific call has to do with antimicrobial resistance. The title, I think, is very descriptive. It's the role of water used in pre- and post-harvest handling and processing operations of fresh and frozen fruits, vegetables, and herbs, in the prevalence, concentration, and amplification of antimicrobial resistant bacteria and antimicrobial resistant genes. This is a goal that builds on work that EFSA has already performed on the role of water in AMR. And the three specific objectives of this project will be to first gain further insights on antimicrobial resistant bacteria and genes in water that is used in these operations, to evaluate the methodologies that are most suitable for the detection of such issues in production systems, thinking on potential surveillance measures, and thirdly, to assess the efficacy of various water disinfection treatments for the elimination of antimicrobial resistant bacteria and genes. Those results obviously will help us fill some of the data gaps that have been previously identified in this field. This is going to be a call for tender. We expect to have a 3 years direct contract there, and the budget for this call will be 950,000 euros. Still staying in the domain of biological hazards, we also expect to have a call for the assessment for the evaluation of procedures around animal byproducts. The title of the call will be Support to EFSA in the evaluation of alternative methods for the use and disposal of animal byproducts and derived products. We expect here 2 streams of work, 2 lots. One will be focusing on the preparatory work for the assessment of those alternative methods and disposal methods of animal byproducts and derived products. This, in essence, will be a support to the working group of EFSA on animal byproducts and to the corresponding panel. And the second stream of work, the second lot, will be focusing on a review, a comparative analysis of previous work done by EFSA and the EU Scientific Steering Committee on animal byproducts. The first lot, that is the support work for the working group, is estimated to be at the intensity of approximately 110,000 euros per year. It will be implemented through a framework partnership agreement, duration 4 years, and a total envelope of 440,000 euros. The second lot, that is the review to the work that has already been done by EFSA and the EU Scientific Steering Committee on animal byproducts, will be a grant of a duration 1 year. Moving now into a different domain, onto the domain of new approach methodologies for chemical risk assessment. We expect to have a call regarding the advancing of environmental neuroscience capabilities that we have. And the aim will be to advance the understanding of the impact of chemical exposure on brain health and disease. Again, this builds on work that we have previously carried out in EFSA to promote new approach methodologies for developmental neurotoxicity. And this project will have three objectives. The first one will be to generate NAMS data for developmental neurotoxicity and neurotoxicity hazard characterization. The second one is to implement the data, that is to look into interlaboratory performance and reproducibility of data, but also to create, to perform a concordance analysis between the NAMS data generated and the in vivo data already available. And the last, and perhaps the most practical one, would be to use this in vitro, this NAMS data for risk assessment in a number of case studies. I believe that the call will be asking for 4 case studies, with particular interest in cases where the in vitro data and the in vivo data do not point to the same direction. This is something that will help us better understand the uncertainties in using such NAMS data in risk assessment. This will be a call for tender. It will have 3 lots with the objectives that I've just mentioned, and the financial envelope will be 3.6 million euros. Staying still in the domain of new approach methodologies, this is a call for the use of omics and organ-on-chip technologies. Again, I think the title is self-descriptive: implementation of a multi-omics workflow to derive human reference points and health-based guidance values from quantitative in vitro data. So the objective here is to use omics data and organ-on-chip technologies to see if we can derive data that can help us do toxicological assessment without necessarily using animal data there. The instrument, the type of the call has not yet been determined. The financial envelope will be about 3 million euros, however. Still staying in the domain of data acquisition, this is an exploratory project that will be launched through a call for tender, a relatively smaller value compared to the previous one, 250,000 euros. The objective here is to look into new opportunities in acquiring chemical data that we can use, of course, for chemical risk assessment needs in EFSA. The tasks here will be to identify and prioritize EFSA's needs in terms of monitoring and surveillance of data for human health risk assessment and also environmental risk assessment. Secondly, identify potential sources of the data needed using a variety of methodologies, so surveys, literature reviews, or interviews, or other means. And finally, and quite importantly, derive recommendations that will point to the needs for perhaps data harmonization or data sharing, modifications to existing data generation pipelines, and any new data that should be generated in order to fill data gaps that we might be having for our risk assessment work. Moving now to environmental risk assessment, a topic not covered by Domenica previously. This one will be on the scientific and technical support in the area of emergency pesticide authorizations. This need stems from a recent request by the European Commission to EFSA to provide a harmonized methodology for the assessment of such requests, a request for exceptional authorization of plant protection products across the member states. The contractor here will be asked to help us develop such a risk assessment methodology, and this should, of course, take into account assessments on emergency authorizations that have taken place in the past. It will also need the creation of a database with alternatives to chemical pesticides. This will be important in order to advise on the options that are available and perhaps could replace the need for an emergency authorization. The work at this call will be shaped in 5 lots. The exact distribution of tasks per lot has not yet been decided, but of course it will be described with detail when the call is launched. The financial envelope foreseen here is 750,000 euros, and this most likely will be a call for tender that will result to a framework contract. Still staying on environmental risk assessment, this is very relevant to the feed domain, and this will be a request for development of a model to predict environmental concentrations of chemical substances in marine sediments when the substance is applied in feed in marine aquaculture. So this is a typical scenario where sea cage aquaculture is used. The project should describe exposure scenarios that are representatives of marine aquaculture in the EU. should generate data in order to calibrate and validate the model that describes the concentration in the sediment, and should also develop a web-based model interface in order for the model to be practically usable. It's important to mention here that the work in this call will not be only of interest to EFSA, but also of interest to the European Medicines Agency and to the European Chemicals Agency as well. This will be a call for tender that will result to a framework contract. So several different contracts will be under it. The overall envelope will be 1 million euros. Now, within this call, and this is important to stress, there will be a contract, there will be a task requested that has to do with the collection of environmental data relevant for the exposure scenario of freshwater sediments from small edge to field water bodies in the EU. This is basically data on sediments for things like streams or ditches or ponds close to cultivated land, mainland area. This work will ask the contractor to collect available data from published scientific literature, but also to create experimental data in order to optimize the model, its input parameters. And of course, the data set, in the end, the data set provided should be representative for the European Union. This is relevant to the work in the pesticides domain, but I need to stress that this will be a task that will be supported from the previous framework contract that I mentioned. Now, moving to the next one, this is a topic that we are creating as we speak. We know that there will be a call launched within 2023 and perhaps another one within 2024, but the details are not yet fully in place. It will have to do with environment scanning, and it will focus on the identification of allergic risk related to food supplements. In particular, the focus will be on stimulants and selective androgen receptor modulators. The objective of this project will be to create a semi-automatic system for the identification and characterization of potential emerging issues that have to do with the said food supplements, and in particular to identify sources of relevant information and develop a proof of concept for methods or for an algorithm for such identification in the area of food supplements. And if all goes well, then use this algorithm in a few case studies and be in a position to transfer the knowledge and the use of the algorithm to bodies in the member states that might be interested to do so. The project should generate a report that will characterize any issues identified in accordance, of course, with the agreed criteria, and provide recommendations on how to build such a system that may cover a wider range of food supplements. As I said, the details of the work in this call are being reviewed as we are speaking, but we expect to have two calls, one in 2023 and one in 2024 for 100,000 euros each. Now, with this, I'm about to conclude. There's only one thing that Giselle mentioned in her introductory presentation. She displayed this slide, which explains the various cooperation paths that EFSA has with organizations and also with individuals. And Giselle mentioned the possibility for somebody to cooperate with EFSA as an individual scientific advisor, or as we call it in EFSA, as an ISA expert. Now, we have a call open on that. It's a call that you can find in our careers page, but also you have the QR code at the lower left side of the slide if you want to visit the call as this presentation is ongoing. The ISA experts, the individual scientific advisors, are people with a scientific background, any scientific background that would enable them to support EFSA in the tasks that you can see in the right side of the slide, which basically cover all the domains that EFSA is active in, including, of course, social sciences that you see as the last bullet point there. Eligibility and selection criteria have been set in the call, and you can see them there. The minimum requirements is for the expert to have a university degree, a 3 years professional experience, and this is important, relevant publications. So relevant publications to the field that the expert is proposing that he or she cooperates with EFSA. And those could be also reports, risk assessment reports instead. The intention of the call is to establish a reserve list. And from that reserve list, EFSA units may identify individuals to work with them to provide support on specific tasks. The range, the intensity of the support really varies on the need, on the circumstances that EFSA will be facing when asking for this support. It can be work that needs a few days, or it can be work that needs quite a few weeks. We have had many different cases in the past there. The call foresees a very simple remuneration method, so basically it foresees a daily rate. And it also establishes a ceiling, a total amount that an expert can get throughout the duration of this call from EFSA, but it's a rather high ceiling. So with all that being said, thank you very much for your patience and for your attention, and I give the floor back to you, Giselle.
Thanks a lot, Gorgias, for presenting this very large number of projects that are published or in the pipeline. So we have now one last presentation before we move to the question and answer. We have received already 5 questions that are published and we will address later on. So I would like to ask now Claudia Heppner from the Chief Scientist Office to present us current planning of work for risk assessment preparedness. Thank you, Claudia. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Giselle, and good morning to everybody online. I think you can see my presentation, right? Good. Okay, perfect. So thanks a lot for joining, and I would like to give you a very short update on the risk assessment preparedness. And please attention, this is not related to 2023, but it is beyond 2023. To ensure, well, what is risk assessment preparedness? To ensure that EFSA can address complex scientific questions and respond to new policy targets, we need to anticipate the future challenges in risk assessment and risk communication. And to achieve this, EFSA has established a process which is based on co-creation, which shall deliver the tools, methodologies, and data for regulatory science and risk communication. This in turn will enhance the speed, precision, and quality of our scientific assessments to inform policy decisions. Our priorities of thematic areas where we need to address knowledge gaps are decided every year and guided by the EFSA 27 strategy. And one important part of this process is really to develop a roadmap for action in a thematic area. Now, this roadmap for action is outsourced by EFSA through a procurement call, and the main objective of these roadmaps are to identify scientific knowledge gaps and provide recommendation how these knowledge gaps can be filled through studies or project calls. Once this roadmap for action is available, EFSA considers the recommendation, but also we take note of our own priorities and business needs and those of our partners before carefully designing and commissioning project calls or studies to fill the knowledge gaps. Now we develop a multi-annual plan to address the recommendations, and this multi-annual plan is also included in our single programming document. And today you have also heard, some of the calls which will be launching in 2023. Now on this slide, I summarize that since 2020, we have developed 4 roadmaps for actions. And for those, multi-annual plans have been developed, and you have heard today the calls we will launch. For example, also the call referenced by Domenica was one example, but we have not yet really developed a multi-annual plan for combined exposure to multiple chemicals. So this roadmap for action and their respective project calls will be developed next year. And then we expect that we have project calls in this thematic area from 2024 onwards. We have currently ongoing a roadmap for action to advance environmental risk assessment for insect pollinators. And this roadmap for action will be finalized. Yes?
We can still only see the first slide.
Yes, it's right. I only have one slide.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Right. So in green, you have the ongoing roadmap for environmental risk assessment for insect pollinators, and this is aimed to be finalized by 2023. And then future project calls in this thematic area are expected to be launched from 2024 onwards. We have also in 2024 on the menu, if I may say, 3 other roadmaps for action. One is in the area of animal welfare, where we look really into developing a framework for assessing animal welfare and having the related data, standardized data to that. And project calls are then expected only from 2024 onwards. We also have in the making from next year onwards a roadmap on communication science, as well as on omics, how to integrate omics and biometric approaches in risk assessment. So all these roadmaps will be developed next year. So the contract award is under signature, and then project proposals are only from 2024 onwards. And last but not least, we also have just recently closed a call to seek proposals for developing a roadmap for action on aggregated exposure assessment. And in case this call is successful, the evaluation is currently ongoing, we then would basically envision project calls from 2025 onwards. With this, I wanted only to provide you a short outlook on the things to come. And with that, I hand back to Giselle. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Claudia. Just to make sure that there is only one slide, which is the title slide, correct?
No, I have one slide, and then I have the preparedness slide. So I have 3 slides.
Because we only could see the title slide.
Oh, then in my case, it seems like it moved. It didn't move.
Maybe can you try to? Yes, now it's working. Apologies,
Sorry.
Everyone. We had a small technical problem. Yeah.
I saw it in the other screen where I moved down. Sorry.
Maybe can you go through just summarizing a little bit the 2 slides that no one managed to see, Claudia?
Okay, yeah, sure. So on this slide, sorry, really, colleagues, you can see basically the roadmap for actions which we have started since 2020. Everything is in project call mode except for the roadmap on risk assessment of combined exposure to multiple chemicals. There we will design basically the multi-annual calls next year, and then we will have, we can expect that from 2024 onwards, project calls will be launched. Right now in light green, there is a roadmap in process advancing on environmental risk assessment for insect pollinators. This roadmap will be finalized next year, and then we can expect project calls from 2024 onwards. And then we have currently 3 roadmaps for actions in the signature phase, meaning these roadmap for actions will be starting next year and will be developed over the course of next year. And respective project calls will then be launched from 2024 onwards. So we have here animal welfare, methodologies and harmonized data collection, evidence-based risk communication, and omics, application of omics and bioinformatic approaches in risk assessment. The last roadmap, which is in italic, which is advancing aggregated exposure assessment, the submission of offers just closed and be in the evaluation process, so we're not sure if this contract will be awarded, but in case the contract will be awarded, then we can expect project proposals from 2025 onwards. Yes, that's in short again, and apologize again that the slide was not visible.
Thank you, Claudia. And sorry, everyone, for the small hiccup we gone through. Okay, so we have got to the end of our presentations, and we have now a little bit of time for question and answer. In fact, we are a bit earlier than what we planned to do, so we take this opportunity to answer with as much detail, as much possible to all your questions. I would like to go first back to a question which is related in fact to the previous block of presentations. And I'm reading this out loud. In relation to the previous question, actually, National Focal Point sent a mail for informing about specific grants to only one contact of the Article 36 Institute, while in the contact database, several names are indicated per domain. Would it be possible that all the contacts mentioned to receive the mail that all the contact will be mentioned to receive the mail in relation to their domain? So Donna has already replied positively, of course. Can I ask also Gorgias to comment on this question, please?
Yes, thank you, Giselle. Donna's reply stands. This is normally how it proceeds. The focal points normally do that in order to avoid duplication of messages. So the focal point route is one, but hold this thought because I will come back to that. So EFSA normally sends an alert, and in most calls, the alert goes to all contact points. And I mean the contact points that have been defined during registration of the Article 36 organizations. Now, on top of that, the communication is sent to the focal point, and the focal point normally disseminates to the main contact point there, but this is a practice that can be discussed also at national level. So if there is interest, if there is need, if it is practically useful to do so, the focal points and the interested parties can discuss on different ways to do that. There's also the possibility, if you look into the Engage side of our website, to subscribe to alerts. So somebody can be receiving automated alerts when specific news develop there. That's another, it's not a very human communication, but that's also another possibility there. But a lot can be discussed with the focal point and the interested parties at national level as well.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Gorgias. We have the next question for Giuseppe. Giuseppe, you have answered already, but maybe if you want to elaborate further as we have the time. Will any of these calls also include work related to post-harvest pest of stored products? Please, Giuseppe.
Thank you. So there's not a specific call on post-harvest pest, on pest of stored products. However, some of the pests on which we launch the calls are also pests of stored product or post-harvest. Particularly, I suggest to look at the description of the topics of each call, particularly for the pest survey card. There is a list of pests, and you can see which are the pests on which we ask the grant to work, the grant holder to work. In general, all our work in plant health in EFSA focus on the mandate from European Commission, which is normally about quarantine plant pest or new and emerging plant pest. So normally we don't work on common European pest. We normally work on exotic pests, which are coming and threatening the EU production of forestry.
Thank you, Giuseppe. We have the next question. How is it decided on which topic grants on procurement calls are open? I know that in your presentation, Donna, you have elaborated slightly on that. Maybe you want to come again on this one. Thanks a lot, Donna.
Hi, yes. The decision starts really in September, October time when we're discussing all the calls for inclusion in the plan, all the scientific needs, and we will have a discussion with the scientific officers responsible to understand what their need is and also to run through with them some of the questions that I shared earlier in the presentation about whether the need is on a very confidential, sensitive piece of work, so we might want to consider limiting to the Article 36. We'll also look into and investigate whether the expertise needed for the call is available on the Article 36 list and could be found via funding through grants. So we'll discuss a number of questions with the scientific officer, who of course has in their head the need for this work. They don't necessarily already at that stage know or understand which would be the best funding tool to support fulfilling that need. So we do that through a series of questions, basically the ones that we were talking about on the slides earlier. So nature of the service, is it confidential, very sensitive? What do we want to happen with the ownership of the intellectual property at the end of it as well? Who will have the deliverables? And also a very final consideration before we do grants is whether it is for a task that is listed in Article 4 of Regulation 2230.
Thanks a lot, Donna. I will move to the next question. Here we know already who has to reply. So, Gorgias, for the EU Fora Fellowship, can one organization participate in more than one project? For example, as a trainer, as a sender, and as sender for more than one fellow? Thanks, Gorgias.
Thank you, Giselle. Okay, small disclaimer. First of all, I'm not the project officer of this call, so my information is, let's say, not too detailed there. I believe, yes, it is possible to do that, but I will refer the interested colleague in that call to the call as well. And for that call, as for any other calls that we have opened, there is the possibility for the interested parties to actually contact, to ask a question for clarification to EFSA. They send an email to procurement and they get a response which actually points to the actual text in the call that covers the question that they've asked. So yes, at the top of my mind, but please, if the question still persists, I advise the colleagues to look into the call, and if there's still need for clarification, to write to EFSA to receive a clarification in writing.
Thank you, Gorgias. Donna, do you want to complement or I move to the next question? Okay. So the next question, where will the reserve list of ISA be available on EFSA website, as is the list for panel and working group members? Maybe I can try to reply to this one. The reserve list as a whole will not be published, but each individual ISA expert, if they have been passing the eligibility check and evaluation, they will be notified, all of them. And then also at the end of the year, EFSA will publish all the experts that have been receiving a contract through the ISA scheme. Donna, again, I'm talking under your control. Is there anything you want to add here? If yes, I give the floor to you.
Yes, just one small additional piece of information there. We will publish those names of individuals who have had contracts above €15,000. So we're not actually permitted to publish the names of any ESA experts that have contracts below that value. There are certain data protection provisions in place that prevent us from publishing that sort of data for contracts below 15,000. But we check regularly with our DPO, so if there are any changes to that and we can publish that information, then we will do so.
Thanks, Donna, for specifying this. So the next question, are there going to be procurement or grants about the specific thematic area of nutrition and novel food in the coming years? I would tend to pass this to Gorgias. I don't know if you have the information right now available, but otherwise we'll come back to Sara Santero.
Thank you, Giselle. I would prefer to refrain from replying. Yes, there will be calls in the broad area available for sure because it's a very active field, but we cannot give the specifics yet because we do not have sufficient information to give something that will be substantial to the colleagues attending the meeting today. I can only say that there are two things. First of all, the intention that we host similar events on a regular basis, and also, and I think that Donna mentioned that, we have a file with the forthcoming plans with our intention to launch calls in the near future for grant and for tender on our website, which we regularly update several times per year. So this is what we have in place so far.
Thank you, Gorgias. We have then two questions, topic specific. Is it possible to implement a project in nutrition for breastfeeding mother to monitor the HA in milk? The situation is poor. The situation is 75% less than the limit. And then the next one, also topic specific. What about the traceability and the authenticity of agricultural products such as wine, olive oil, vegetable extract, raw material? Although this one is maybe more for a risk manager. I ask, please, if Gorgias, you want just to comment, or we want to come back to the colleagues who have posted those questions. Thanks, Gorgias.
Thank you, Giselle. Again, I can only give a general answer to that. This is a request for a specific call there. I'm not commenting on the need or not to have such a call or to cover this work there. So far, for the work program that we have just presented for 2023, this is not the case. That does not exclude the possibility that it will be in the future there. A general piece again of information which has been mentioned by the two colleagues from Aspasia, the Cypriot focal point, and also to some extent from Elena, is that the focal point would be a place to share with them such gaps or such ideas. And that is because they, by the nature of their work, they are in contact with EFSA and they exchange with us views about what is a need, indeed you need or local need there, and that would be a route to also consider there. So for the time being, for the work program of 2023, which is the objective of the school, there's no such intention on the table. Of course, that does not mean that an opportunity on that will not appear for the year after. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another one on the alerts. Do the alerts for which we can register via the website also concern alerts on grants that are only for Article 36 institutes? Donna, do you want to reply to this one?
Hi, yes, no, the alerts are not limited exclusively to grants. You can also sign up for alerts about procurement procedures as well.
Thank you. The next one, how does EFSA decide what topic to fund work on? This is a quite complex procedure that we initiate well in advance. We have also a dedicated process in-house, workforce planning, which is looking, I'm trying to answer this, I will give the floor also to other colleagues. We're trying to look at the workload, incoming workload for EFSA and make decision on which part of the work is meant to be carried out by EFSA staff, what has to be processed by our expert in working groups and panels, and which is the part of the work that we might decide to carry out because we don't have internal capacity anymore. We also look at framework, contract or partnership agreement or other sort of already active outsourcing where we can include the additional work. And mainly the decision is taken through this, these two mechanisms. But Donna, maybe you want to comment on this, please.
Yeah, I would just add that, of course, there's an exercise of prioritisation that goes on, and also during the year, whilst we try to plan up front in September, October time, we're looking at the calls that have been suggested by all units to meet their needs. Ad hoc needs will arise during the year as well. So and those will be there to meet the needs expressed to address mandates which have been received ad hoc during the year. So there are a variety of decisions that come into play about which calls, which types of procedures we will fund.
Thank you, Donna. Then we have another question to which you have already responded. So there you can find the link to EFSA procurement, very useful for any question you might have. And then there is a last question, but I see some more questions coming in the pipeline anyway. Why do you open the antimicrobial call as a tender, but not as a grant? Gorgias, would you like to provide some insight in here?
Thank you, Giselle. I think the response has been given indirectly, not specifically from this quote from Donna earlier on. So when the colleagues in EFSA, I mean the colleagues in the science units discuss about the need for a call, and they try to frame it both in terms of tasks that the call will cover, but also in terms of audience, they try to see a variety of things. First of all, they try to identify where they think that the competencies are in place in order for the call to be successful, not just as a call, but as a project also. So for instance, if the group of Article 36 organizations does not, is not very likely to have the skills needed, then we will need to address a broader market, and the EU market, which can be reached through a call for tender, is the first answer to that. But there are also a number of other things. Donna mentioned ownership. So for instance, if the results need to be owned by EFSA, this would indicate, this would suggest that the call for tender would be the way to go. So these are two indicative factors. There are a number of factors that are considered in order to advise us on whether we should open something as a call for grant or a call for tender, including, of course, discussions that at times we have with member state representatives in the bodies of EFSA. Thank you.
Thank you, Gorgias. There is another question. Are the grants open to low and medium income countries? Donna has already replied. Do you want to just elaborate on this, Donna? Or?
Yeah. I'll just summarize whether the country in which the organisation is based is a low and middle income country is not a factor on whether an organisation can be accepted onto the Article 36 list. So only organisations which are designated by their member state and are then included on the Article 36 list by the EFSA Management Board are eligible for EFSA grants. Now, that list and that designation is restricted to EU member states, also Iceland and Norway.
Thank you, Donna. I'm reading the next question. As a newcomer Article 36 organization, how can we get involved in EFSA grant or activities, involve some researchers as experts, submit grants? How can we start in a successful way? Is there an online platform to allow interaction between Article 36 organization? Who wants to go for this? Donna?
Yeah. I just add to this, and then I hand on over to somebody else to elaborate further. But what is coming with EFSA's use of the EU funding and tenders portal and using e-submission for grants, there is a very useful function within that tool that allows the searching for consortium. Okay, so to find a partner with which you can apply to a particular call. So if you take a look at the EU Fora fellowship grant at the moment, which is advertised, there is a functionality on that page that allows you to register and say that you're looking for a partner with which you would like to apply to this grant, because that is a consortium application for that grant. So that's a very useful way when EFSA starts advertising all its grant calls using that platform, that perhaps new Article 36 organisations or ones that haven't had grants in the past could use that functionality to post to say that they are interested in forming a consortium with some other Article 36 organisations in order to apply.
Gorgias, you wanted to come in this one?
Yes, Giselle, thank you. But also, if possible, if time allows, also to give the floor to Elena and the focal point colleagues. I would point to the focal points basically because it is a big part of their mission to us to act as a networking hub, to ask for interest nationally, to ask for ideas, to ask for initiatives and things like that. So I would say that apart from any digital platforms that may exist, and Donna pointed out the e-grants portal there, I would say that the best ways to actually get involved is to contact the focal point, take advantage of events that they organize at a national level, and also meet the community at the national level there as well. And without, of course, preempting what Elena might have to add to that, at times EFSA is organizing networking events, conferences, and things like that. I know it's not a very old-fashioned solution to the problem of getting engaged, but it's a very effective one. Thank you.
Elena, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Gorgias. You actually covered most of things what I wanted to highlight. Yes, as a new Article 36 organization, you are very welcome to connect with your focal point. Our focal point task is to support you, ask all the questions what you like to ask, look for. Really, as Gorgias said, look for the information on focal point events, what they are organizing. Focal points as a best practices, at least once a year, bring together all Article 36 organizations, meaning that you can have a possibility to interact with already maybe more experienced Article 36 organizations and from your national level, and exchange best practices or share common bottlenecks that can have to be addressed. Yes, one more thing what I would like to say is use possibilities and check on different EFSA channels, web page or YouTube channel, different workshops what EFSA already has provided on, for example, grant applications or possibilities of different possibilities around the different informational workshops, recordings available. So this is one way how to get familiar with EFSA's work, application procedures, and it can be easily shared with everyone. So yes, keep in touch with your focal point and use opportunities to interact with focal point and other organizations through the national events. Thank you. Floor back to Giselle.
Thank you, Elena. We have a last question. In some 2023 Horizon calls, the advice of EFSA is expressly required. Would it be possible to know which office unit to contact for a formal invitation in a consortium? I would like to give the floor to Claudia here, if possible, if she has information about that. Thanks, Claudia.
Thank you, Giselle. Yes, I'm live, I'm read. Okay. I'm not sure if the question refers at the beginning of the application, because if this is the case, for example, we as a new agency cannot commit to engage in research consortia during the competitive stage of an application. because this is a principle of equal treatment. However, EFSA can formally collaborate with the consortium once the selection has been taken place and the winning consortium has been chosen. So if this is the case that, you know, there's already a winning consortium, then, you know, it's something you can contact either the respective unit, you know, which you think this call falls into, or you can also contact my co-worker Steph Bronswar at EFSA, who is basically the research coordinator.
Thank you, Claudia. So we have gone through all the questions. We had in fact received also questions before the meeting that we will try to respond to, and either directly to you or post it on the website, where we will include the conclusion of today's event. And I would like to quickly wrap up. We are 5 minutes late, so there is a few minutes left to summarize a little bit today's event. I want to start by reflecting on the why we wanted to have this event with you today. Is really because we are moving forward to a new era for cooperation. We want to expand this cooperation, and to do it, of course, we need you. We need your organization to support our risk assessment work through the calls, through the outsourcing, through the partnership we want to put in place and reinforce. We have gone through the EFSA outsourcing mechanism. Thanks a lot, Donna, for a very precise information that you shared. And you have learned about the financial support system that are available, including the new budget EFSA has at disposal, which is relevant indeed. We have then gone through also the EFSA focal point network and the services and the task they can support EFSA and the member state with. So thanks also to the colleagues from the focal point of Cyprus, but also Elena. We have given an overview on the planned calls for 2023. Those, of course, are preliminary information that we share with you. So we invite you to check regularly our website to see how those calls are developing. We have also looked at the calls that are already published, and we have given a little bit more information on those. And of course, please visit our website to see and check more with more detail the terms of reference and what is requested. And please do apply if you have any interest. We plan to organize similar event, and this is because precisely we want to look with you together on what's coming up. We want to elaborate, we want to discuss and receive your question on the next year event, or the next year grants and procurement plan that we will publish. We might do that on a yearly basis, but we might even think of doing this more often. There will be also the opportunity for having ad hoc event for large calls, either before they are launched or once they are launched, to inform the organization on what's on the plate for those calls. Because we are planning so many events and we want really to disseminate more on our grants and procurement scheme, we would like also to please compile the post-event survey. You will receive a link, and we would be very, very grateful if you could complete the survey so that we can learn more on how to hold events like this in the future. Having said that, I would like to thank all of you for participating. I would like to thank all my colleagues for having dedicated a lot of time and passion to the preparation of this info session today. So thank you once more for your participation. Thanks to the technical team that have supported this large team event. Thank you. We wish you a very nice afternoon and the best for the festive period. Thanks again and bye-bye. See you at the next info session. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.